Hi, I'm a TVB and I find garbage. Today's garbage is The Empty Man, a completely by-the-numbers horror film which stars some people that I've never heard of and is about like this Tibetan demon that makes it's called the Empty Man that makes its way to Missouri, and there's like a crime investigation thriller. It's a horror thriller right in time for Halloween. I was originally gonna skip The Empty Man completely because not one critic on Rotten Tomatoes has reviewed this movie, so I figured it was just like a just a completely stupid horror film that wasn't worth my time or money. But you know what? I decided to just watch some other people's movie reviews for it, and I was like, okay, it's Halloween. Saw The Conjuring last night, so might as well see another horror movie as well, because Halloween's right around the corner. So let's just go to this movie just to see how bad it is. And get this, guys. I was the only person in the entire auditorium, which has been happening to me a lot lately when I go to the movies since, August when they started reopening, because, people haven't been going to the movies for, obvious reasons. I was the only person in the entire theater. This movie is 2 hours and 16 minutes long, right? And this movie did not scare me at all. I stood completely still. There were jump scares. They didn't get to me at all. I stood completely still with a completely straight face and nothing got under my skin. When a horror movie doesn't succeed to scare me, when I'm the only person in the theater and have no one else to be scared with, you done screwed up, bud. I know I usually keep my movie reviews spoiler-free unless they're classic reviews like the Conjuring review that I made last night, but guys, I really just won't feel fulfilled about reviewing the Empty Man if I don't go into spoilers, because I don't want to talk about this movie, period, let alone talk about it without spoiling it. So if anyone genuinely cares about The Empty Man, if you haven't seen this movie already, if you don't want spoilers, click off the video, I guess. If anyone seriously cares about spoilers for this movie, like, I don't know why you would, but I'm going to talk about spoilers because I have to talk about this. I didn't watch any trailers for this movie, but I saw, other smaller YouTubers review it, and you guys should check this guy out, Tyler Calvert. Like, he's pretty cool. He should, and, give him a subscribe and whatnot. Like, us smaller YouTubers gotta stick together, especially in this day and age. Yeah, so from what, I saw from other YouTubers who have seen this film, it seemed to be, the whole movie would just be taking place in Missouri, with this ex-police officer, named James, investigating this case. But no, the first 30 minutes of this 2 hour and 16-minute movie is in the Himalayas. It's in Bhutan, with these 4 American tourists who, for the sake of this review, I'm just going to call Jerkface, Possessed Guy, Bitch 1, Bitch 2. And they're hiking, and they're going about their business. Then a Possessed Guy hears a funny noise, starts walking around, then he falls into this ditch, right? So Jerkface has to, like it's Far Cry 4 or something, he has to grapple down into the ditch to get him out of there. And there he is, just meditating in front of this skeleton with multiple arms, and it looks really creepy, like it's a demonic skeleton. And he starts hey, yo, Paul, or whatever his name is, are you okay, buddy? We gotta get you out of here. And he's just if you touch me, you die. I'm oh, the tension's getting worse, I guess. But yeah, he just pulls him out, and they completely skip over the part where they actually get him out of the ditch, because the writers were just too lazy to film them doing that, I guess. And then they're scrambling around looking, because the Possessed Guy is completely unresponsive, so they find a shack, and they camp out in it for 2 days. So Bitch 1 has to keep an eye on the Possessed Guy, and then Jerkface and Bitch 2 go out for some stupid reason, and then Bitch 1 sees a shadowy figure out in the distance and assumes that it's somebody, a local. It's help us, but no, it's actually the Empty Man, it's the demon. So she sprints back in the house and locks the door, and she hears the door banging, and she grabs a knife, oh, get away from me. It's so cliche. And then it's her 2 friends yo, let us in. And then the storm goes away, and Jerkface is all restless, and he's angry because the Possessed Guy goes missing. And then the 3 of them go out, and they follow his footsteps in the snow to where he's meditating in front of a bridge, and he's just I'm so sick of this bullshit, yo, we need to get out of here now. And then Possessed Guy, because Bitch 1 still has the knife on her for some reason, and then he mind controls her to stab Jerkface and Bitch 2 and send them both fall off the cliff. And then she commits suicide and jumps off the cliff because she's mind controlled or something. And get this, somehow Possessed Guy manages to get all the way back to America go back to civilization, take an airplane or something, go home. And yeah, that part is never explained at all. And what's worse is that that possessed guy, the whole opening 30 minutes in Bhutan has like no pertinence in the plot until the very end of the film, when, you know, possessed guy's somehow in the hospital, and like the girl who's with him is also like, you know, a servant of the empty man or something, and nothing makes sense in this movie. And like they transfer like the host, the demon, into James, and just the writing in this movie makes zero sense. And here's this is probably the biggest issue I have with this movie, is that the first 30 minutes were legit the most intriguing part about it. How they're in Bhutan and they're, you know, hiking in the mountains and they get possessed. This movie would have been honestly a lot better if it just stayed in the mountains. If it stayed in this like wild, isolated, desolate place with just 4 characters being haunted by a demon with one of their friends being possessed. But nope, they just had to go back to America and make it like such a typical cliched, you know, horror thriller, like crime investigation film. Like this could have been like The Lighthouse in the Himalayas. Like it could have, they completely squandered the possibility of like them staying in an isolated location, which would have made it scarier and more intense. But nope, they just had to go back to civilization and squander that possibility. And apparently this movie was based on a comic book series. The fact, like, I used to think that, like, oh, it's a bonus if the movie has potential, but the fact that this movie had potential while still being terrible made its shortcomings even more heinous to me, because they had, like, the ingredients, but lost the recipe because they just had to, you know, take it back to Missouri, which was really stupid. And like I said, guys, this movie borrows like every single cliche in the horror movie handbook there is. It's like, oh, there's jump scares, there's just, you know, Google searches for like the demonic entity that they're trying to crack down on, and it's like the ex-cop, it's, you know, James, his motivations are all over the place, and like the narrative is so jumbling. Again, this movie is 2 hours and 16 minutes long. It's very boring, and nothing really happens, nothing of intriguing value really happens, and the cliches just got really annoying. Like there's this is one like teenage girl played by Samantha Logan, and you know the classic horror movie cliche, like, oh, when there's like a sex scene or nudity leads to death. Yeah, there's one scene where she's in the sauna and she takes off her like bathrobe and you see her, you know, her stuff, and is like sitting there, and then like the empty man is there and like gets her like stab herself a few times. It's like this movie had like an excuse for nudity with an actress who's playing a high school student. Who are you trying to arouse with this? Pedophiles? And there's another scene when James is like going on his investigation. He finds a cabin in the woods and like reads and watches videotapes of people who are also doing like the same rituals for like the empty man. And then he goes outside and sees a whole crowd of like possessed guys moving around a circle on a big bonfire. It keeps going up and down and up and down. And then at some point the bonfire just goes straight up into the sky and forms a sky beam. A sky beam! This movie uses cliches from other genres. This horror movie is using like a sci-fi fantasy cliche that we've seen a bunch of times before. That is insulting. And yeah, the acting is very wooden, and the writing is just atrocious, and like no one in this film like really puts any emotion into their story, except for this one scene when like James like kidnaps this one kid and writes him out, like interrogates him, like punches him, and like threatens to shoot him, like, hey, tell me everything you know about this empty man. And the kid starts laughing after being punched in the face like he's Joker or something. That was one scene where it wasn't wooden, but it was over the top acting instead. This film just can't seem to get its pacing right, and the protagonist, if you can't tell by now, is very unlikable, and I'm not rooting for him. I'm supposed to root for him, but I can't because he's a jerk, and he just drinks and smokes and, you know, is like stumbling around the place aimlessly, and it's just annoying. Honestly, I feel like there's more I could say about The Empty Man, but I feel like everything I just like vented about is enough. Like, yeah, this film had like a decent setup, but it just completely messed it up, and yeah, it's just like, I guess this movie was like in, like, because Disney bought Fox, so it's like this movie was like in the vault for there for a very long time. So I just had to shoot it out because the theaters, you know, reopened, you know, after the pandemic, and it's Halloween. So like, hey, let's just put a horror movie out or something like that. But yeah, this movie is just, I haven't read the comics that's based on. maybe I'll read I should read more comics, so maybe I'll pick up the comics at some point and read those, see how well the comics hold up to the movie. But yeah, as an adaptation, and on its own terms, I promise you this movie collapsed on both parts. And this movie is not as bad as The Turning, which was the last really horrible, horror movie that I saw this year before the pandemic started, of course. But yeah, a bad movie is still a bad movie. I'm giving The Empty Man a 2 out of 10 stars. It's a little generous. It's still garbage, though. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We only have 1 week of Spooktober left, and Halloween is next Saturday, so, whatever ends up happening, I'm sure we'll be in for a good time. And, yeah, thanks a lot for watching this review. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, and subscribe to this channel, please, and like this video, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. My name is TVB9, and I'm just probably going to play some Warzone and go to bed. Alright, stay beastly.